Okay, so here we have some clay fresh from the bag, just opened it, and we're going to look at the process of wedging the clay. Very malleable, very flexible clay to be working with, but we need to critically employ the process now of wedging on the wedging bench here in order to get the clay thoroughly mixed and consistent. Wedging the clay is critically important because it's all about getting that evenness of consistency in the clay, which can be critical both when you're working with the clay in the plastic state, throwing it on the potter's wheel, when you're turning it in the leather hard state on the wheel, or it can also have a critical bearing on faults that might generate in the pots after they've been fired and finished. So to look at this wedging, what we're going to do is take a third of this bag of clay. I'm going to cut through it with a smooth wire here, and then we're going to use that lump of clay to wedge, process and weigh for throwing. So when you come to the wedging bench, it's important that it's clear, it's clean of any grit or rubbish or hard bits of clay on the surface. Scrape it away and have the clean, clear wedging surface to start from. So when you come to your clay, it's important that you only handle as much clay as you feel comfortable about handling. Maybe this for you might be about 2, 3, 4 kilograms. And it's important that you're trying to get the clay into an even consistency, even out the harder lumps and the softer lumps from each other, and try and eradicate any air bubbles that might be trapped inside that clay. What we're going to look at is these early stages of wedgings, where sometimes you might bang the table, the clay down onto the table, cut up through the clay, rotate the clay towards you, and bang it back down on itself. And that way you're mixing up the clay particles and you're starting to distribute the clay more generally through itself. So I'm rolling that back towards me now, rotating and pushing it back down on itself, turning the block of clay around again, banging it down on the table, using this smooth wire again to cut up through the clay, rotating it towards me again, banging it down, kneading it towards me, all the time trying to even any unevenness out of the clay and push any air out of the clay. So after running through that process, maybe for 2 or 3 minutes of cutting and rotating the clay, then we're ready to look at the process of wedging the clay more intensely through a process that's sometimes referred to as ram's head or bull's head wedging, and rotating the clay on itself and pushing any air out, so a more methodical rotation of the clay, forcing the air out. You can see from the way I'm standing here, I have my left leg in front of my right leg, so I can be leaning in towards the table and using my body weight over the clay rather than it all being about pressure from my kind of upper body. So I'm going to rotate the clay towards me and push down through the clay as it comes right up to the top, pushing through down into the clay. And repeating that process constantly. Clay comes up to the top and pushing it down. What I'm not doing here is wedging any air into the clay, and so when it comes up to the top, pushing down through the clay. And you can see why this wedging technique gets its name of bull's head or ram's head wedging, from the shape it forms in the clay. Often when you're learning, you'll be sticking with with this ram's head wedging technique to process all of your clay. Often as you invest more time and gain more experience in the preparation of the clay, you'll find that you may well gravitate more towards using a spiral wedging technique, which is similar to the bull's head wedging, but instead of having an equal emphasis pushing with both palms against the clay, you'll find that you're giving increased pressure with your right hand and palm pushing through the clay, and the left hand becomes more about rotating the clay. This technique's often preferred by potters who use the wheel just because it can be a faster way of processing the clay. And you'll get a sense of how it gets its name from the spiral that it forms within the clay. And now the clay's evenly wedged, we can put it into one solid block and it's ready for cutting and weighing, ready for throwing on the wheel.